Hey folks, the Italian video game industry has always been, let's say, not much celebrated, at least during my younger years. See, this is a country where video games have always been somewhat ostracized, and fundings were limited, although the Italian government once funded this historic... oh shit. Over the years, I've always been aware of highly regarded racing games, both simulations and arcades, such as Screamer or Superbike 2001, and recently... okay, not really because it was 2014. Details? Assetto Corsa has become a global reference, thanks also to the incredible modding community. Sometimes I also play it with my Thrustmaster wheel, but I'm actually terrible. On the other hand, there have been several classic adventures that are not really my genre. Then the sensational case of Grezzo 2. Yes, Grezzo 2.
C'ho colpa chi t'ammazza!
Guarda un po' quello l'incazzato.
But also the old Etrom the Astral Essence, an RPG which I was going to cover soon. However, I recently discovered a rather obscure game that deserved my attention, and I wanted to give it priority. That is, First Century After Tsunami 2265. From now on, let's just call it Tsunami. This game can be considered a love letter to Japanese animation, and in particular to the mecha genre, with which a lot of Italians from the 70s to the 90s have grew up with. To put it short, as somebody else has already stated, Tsunami is the Italian Shogo. Remember Shogo, that unbalanced jankfest developed by Monolith which still was a fun FPS? Well, Tsunami is something similar, but in third person, and much less fun. And here's some excerpts from its anime-style opening. Yeah, you can feel the passion of its developers. The character design even reminds me of some important authors, and also the mecha design seems inspired. In such cases, you would end up thinking if you found the hidden gem. You would say, this game rocks. In truth, this game sucks. Tsunami is not only janky and very bugged like other games I've covered. No, it's also extremely repetitive and boring. The overall action is just underwhelming and limited, with an alternation of levels on mechs and on foot, where the overall quality of the level design is abysmal, and the environments look always the same, due to poor assets variety. See this freaking stone arc here? Or better to say, this whole goddamn canyon? I've seen it recycled many times. And the enemies are almost brain dead, although extremely deadly in the advanced stages. Believe me, even the Beast Wars game previously covered felt funnier than Tsunami. That is just more forgiving. Alright, there's also a story. Well, without going too deep into details, in Tsunami we play as both Neon Shima and Naoko Hihaki. Neon is a former samurai who has failed to protect his lord, the daimyo Kenji Sugiyama, killed by his own nephew Tetsuo. Thus he has become a ronin, a warrior without a lord, now embarked on a quest for vengeance against the man who has betrayed everyone. Anyway, he gets immediately captured by a squad of ninjas and took prisoner.
That traitor Tetsuo will pay for the murder, with his life.
Good start, Neon. Good start. On the other hand, Naoko Hihaki is a badass samurai who loyally serves her lord. What's his name now? Oh yes, the Shogun Morfeuzu Samado no. It's his name, I swear. No, it's not. So, the Shogun first tells Naoko about the Elena project, a mysterious energy source found at the bottom of the ocean, which was kept and studied in secret, and the only ones aware of its existence were him and the late Emperor. He then informs Naoko that the group of rebels from Sector Tool 3 who have assassinated the aforementioned daimyo Kenji Sugiyama have taken possession of the Helena, which must be retrieved because the future of the Empire and the whole world depends from it. Very original. Naoko's first mission will be to free Neon Shima from captivity, because he knows how to penetrate Tool 3 in order to retrieve Elena and bring it back to the capital Shinbale. And that's it. It's now time to kick some heavy metal ass on board of our cool armor. And here starts the real game, in the boring canyon, where not even after a minute from the start, I've soon encountered one of the strangest bugs I've ever seen. Be ready, folks, here it comes. The fucking game has recognized my standing vertical jump as a fatal fall. Seriously, I've just died because I jumped some meters from the ground. This is... I don't know how to describe it. Look, here's some other examples. The morning shows the day. We can say that. As I said, the overall action is limited and repetitive. We have a primary fire mode with a pistol or some kind of machine gun in other levels. As a secondary, we can launch missiles that, quite randomly, will lock on targets and are not that useful. And that's all. No extra weapons. No melee attacks of any kind. Just this banal shooting. The canyon is also full of enemies, but the best thing to do is to run past them, since they will not even chase us, so that we can quickly reach the next checkpoint, where a cutscene usually starts. Unfortunately, it's always our controlled character pointing out trivial things and wasting time. We'll come back to this later. Now, the game doesn't allow to save progress through missions, but features instead a limited number of lives that cannot be replenished with bonuses. When we finish them, it's game over, and have to restart the freaking mission. Frankly, this wouldn't be a big problem, if it weren't for the fact that the game's missions are quite long, anywhere from half an hour to a full hour or more, depending on how much time we spend wandering around, trying to orient ourselves without any landmarks, because the environments tend to look always the same, and the raider has a compass that rarely proves useful. But wait, I still haven't shown you the best. Prepare yourselves.
Damnation! I can't resist it!
How the fuck I was supposed to know that going there would have triggered an unavoidable death trap? There's no clue, and it's not even the only case. No, there are at least 2 or 3 more in this level that can consume all the credits. This is bullshit. Luckily, the first mission is the only one that contains such BS, and there's only one other case in one of the final levels. It's like if they realized it was such a stupid idea. Sometimes what seems to be a deviation is actually the right path to avoid one of these traps. But, for example, to avoid being sucked into the infamous turbine, you have to walk on the right side of this road and avoid this action. Yes, That's very intuitive. I wonder how many people guessed it without losing a life the first time. Anyway, besides shooting enemies like droids, bipedal mechs and goddamn turrets, the levels also feature some puzzles, like destroying power generators or switches to open doors, and nothing else, except small variations. Yep, basically what we see in this first mission pretty much sums up the entire game. But wait, there are still the on-foot missions. So, Naoko reaches the prison complex where Neon is prisoner, gets out of her mech, and what follows is... you'll see the Jankfest. You'll see. Leaving aside how weird the running animation is, I mean, look at that. These missions involve a lot of shooting, and the enemies often have lightning fast reflexes, for a change. But they also happen to stand there like idiots getting killed. And you know what else? They can be very deadly. And I found it absurd that the devs placed medkits near almost every encounter, as if they'd noticed the imbalance and tried to balance it out. In any case, it's always best not to waste them, and remember where they are in case of emergency. And believe me, there will be many. Furthermore, to interact with anything like buttons or to simply pick up keys, we'll always have to holster the gun, and then remember to draw it again immediately, since it takes precious milliseconds, and it's best not to get caught unprepared. It happened to me several times, and it wasn't nice. No, it even cost me some deaths. Both the puzzles and the level design are... well, nothing memorable. It's always just a matter of finding keys and using switches, and then wandering around looking for the right door to open, or the new path we just unlocked. And once again, everything looks the same, and the orientation sucks as a result. I would have really appreciated an automap. And to make sure we don't miss anything, there's even a bit of platforming. Look how awful it is. To jump over anything we need the right positioning, otherwise our character will hit even the simple step, and later as Neon we'll even have to climb high ledges, which requires us to be attached to the walls to perform it. And on top of all this, I'd like to know why instead of a simple backstep my character covers instead a whopping 2 meters. It may not be clear in the video, but believe me, I fell off cliffs and lost momentum during fights because of this crap. It's just ridiculous, and there's no way to control it. And this, folks, was in summary the tedious and flawed gameplay of Tsunami. Yeah, it was not a fun experience to play, especially towards the end, where enemies are extremely powerful, and in the last level, I was so overwhelmed by frustration that I ended up using cheats to see the freaking ending. Yeah, I know, I'm terrible, but believe me, this shit is insane, and there's a huge lack of medkits. Seriously, fuck it. Anyway, if there was something that encouraged me to endure the jankness, bugs and crashes, that was the story. I mean, it's not anything original or particularly well written, but let's say it's interesting. Once Naoko frees Neon and offers him the chance to exact revenge in exchange for his informations and help, we'll follow him as he recovers his powerful armor. This involves completing several missions in which we'll play as him, but aside the look and the rate of fire of the piloted mech, nothing changes. It's all the same. We'll then witness a briefing scene in which the protagonists plan their infiltration of Sector 2-3, and also delve deeper into their personal goals. On the one hand, Neon is driven by the desire for revenge against Tetsuo, even if it means taking a dark path, while on the other, Naoko simply wants to complete an honorable mission and save the Empire. All this will lead to the unraveling of mysteries such as the true origin of Helena, and the final confrontation with Tetsuo, and it all culminates in a rather long yet not so bad finale. In the end, it's a very cheesy story where the overall writing is pretty banal, the characters are stereotypical, and the acting overall is very amateurish and cartoonish. To give you an idea, do you remember that episode of Futurama where they suddenly parodied the way anime characters speak in a very, very caricatural way? Well, the English dub of Tsunami reminded me of that parody. And what's more, the lines are spoken at an abnormal speed, and the lip-singing, it's terrible. Here's some scenes.
Not even the tiger's cruel claws can grasp a soul emptied of all thought and all feeling. Cast aside your worries and... These are hard times, samurai. The Empire needs a new ruler, and the world needs to slake its thirst for energy.
I see, but there's no way that I can help you.
I know. I'll come to Shin Ballet when I'm ready.
How will you manage?
First of all, I must find a way of getting out of here. Then I'll go to Zone FS3O. It won't be hard to get my AK out of the temple.
You are very angry, young Ronin. You are departing from the way of the warrior.
Shima, is that you?
Judging by the number of times you called me, I thought you were sure. Why do you need me? You wanted to know how to get through it, right? Good. You'll never make it alone. I can help you. All you have...
Oh yes, before I forget, remember the aforementioned continuous remarking of every shit that happens or is noted during the missions? Every time there's a cutscene of few seconds, where Naoko or Neon talk about what the heck is in front of them, as if the player is not smart enough to understand that they've just found the freaking key or switch needed, or what's that machinery in front of them, and many, many other things. Believe me, it's just unnerving.
A level 1 elevator access pass. A control area pass.
The entrance to the underground passageway.
Looks like a circuit inductor.
It's open.
You don't say. Now I think I should spend some words about the graphics and sound. Well, the overall graphic compartment is not that bad for its time. The cel shading is actually nice, and gives the feeling of playing, yes, a wannabe interactive anime, also thanks to the character and mecha designs, which are kinda inspired. But what I find bad instead are the particle effects, and the very stiff animations. And talking about the sound, well, the soundtrack is... oh wait, the soundtrack is great, and warns several pompous pieces, especially during the missions on mechs, that make the overall experience much more bearable. Although the sound effects are okayish, perhaps a bit repetitive. Frankly, the main problem with the audio is the damn audio mixing. I had to play with this parameter several times to make some dialogues listenable, but with poor results. On a technical level, the game is pretty... messy. See, aside that insane bug regarding the jumps, the game tends to crash during loadings, or at the start of cutscenes, or even when shooting enemies during on-foot missions. Oh, and the camera often fucks up if you try to rebind the controls. Besides, sometimes the game didn't autosave between missions, and I had to use a cheat to skip the level because replaying it was out of discussion. It even happened that I was forced to use it when it crashed 2 consecutive times at the end of one of the final levels. It was traumatic. And this was First Century After Tsunami 2265, a game I hoped would be better than its terrible premise, given that the average score on Metacritic predicted a disaster. And I'm reluctant to say that 35% was deserved. I was hoping to say it's instead a decent game, and perhaps it wasn't understood at the time. But no, it's pretty bad. I like to imagine these developers as members of the Goldrake generation, who wanted to create the game of their dreams, because they grew up with the numerous anime series of the 70s, 80s and 90s, which were imported here and made many of us dream, especially the mecha ones, like Grandizer, Steel Jig, Yatterman, and Titan 3. Unfortunately, Tsunami is decidedly forgettable, and the reasons may lie in a probable lack of budget, or the experience with this genre. Who knows? To finish, the idea and inspiration were there, but frankly, it's not something I'd recommend picking up lightly, as it's not even short. In fact, it lasted me over 10 hours. And that said, I hope you enjoyed discovering another little known game, this time made by my fellow Italians. As always, a warm thanks to all viewers, and see you in the next entry.